So let's get into the really important stuff. And now these examples, you can actually follow along and open up the files rather than just have me talk to you. Let's talk about layers. Layers are critical. If you've never used Photoshop before, but you've used Illustrator in your previous class, you had access to layers, but they were less important to you in Illustrator. In Illustrator, if we had a square and a circle and you put them on top of each other, um, they're going to be perfectly fine. You have stacking order to send things forward and backwards. But in Photoshop, everything revolves around layers. If I have two sets of pixels and I merge them onto the same layer, I'm going to throw away whatever's on the bottom. So it's very important to your organization, to the creation of your graphics, to your layouts, that you always pay attention to what layer you're on and what you're making on each layer. The other thing you have to pay attention to is naming your layers. It might seem a little trivial, but if you don't name your layers in the industry, you will be judged. Okay, so let's dive into folder 2 called layers, and I have some notes for you. But more importantly, is I have a couple smart objects where you can go in and do the same exercises I'm doing. So what we'll do is we'll go into Smart Object 1 and just do all the kind of little things. Let's talk about the little things that get in the way of creating in Photoshop when you're first not comfortable with layers. So here I have my document, and you can see I have my, I have type, I have, my inner ring, I have my outer rings, and that's the first thing, and I've already mentioned it already. The first thing is you always have to name your layers. If I want to change the name of something, I just double click on it on the word. If I double click anywhere else, it's going to pull up my layer style or it'll give me a different command. So I have to double click right on the name, and I can change this to, Design Essentials type, or any of those. If you have everything named Untitled 1 through Untitled 32, there's a problem. I can reorder my layers very easily just by clicking and dragging. And if I want to select more than one layer, it's just like selecting files on your computer. I just hold down Shift, and I can click anywhere when holding down Shift. Okay. However, if I want to select, let's say, this top layer and the bottom layer, that's when I'm going to hold down Command, and you can see I can select, whatever I can add to my selection, or I can hold down Command Option, or that would be Control Option on a PC, and I can deselect. So if you're coming around, I want to select everything but the inner ring, I'll just hold down Command and Option, Control and Alt on a PC actually, and deselect. Okay. Now also I can copy and paste just like I do in Microsoft Word. If I press Delete, it'll delete everything. If I hit Command C and Command V, it'll copy that layer. And you can see I have my Move tool. The Move tool is like the selection tool in Photoshop and Illustrator, but we actually also have selection tools down here. So they call it the Move tool because it's not really selecting objects. It's just, well, moving them around. But you can see I can copy and paste as many times as I want, and I can even copy and paste across my documents. You can see I have my tabs open. I'm inside my Smart Object right now. So if I Command C and copy that layer, I can go into another layer, or sorry, go into another document, hit paste, and now that layer is in there. Okay. Little things. Sometimes when you first open a document, especially if it's something you didn't create, you can just turn off the eyeballs and turn them back on. That's an easy way to kind of get used to, okay, what layer is doing what, because you will get lost, especially when you're, again, brand new to Photoshop. However, a nice little shortcut is if I take my Move tool and I'm like, okay, I want to select my type layer now, I can just Command click, and when I Command click, it'll select whatever layer I have that pixel is on. So if I go to my type, I Command click there, you can see it selected my type layer. If I Command click on one of the particles, it should, yep, take me over the particles. Now every now and again you might have be clicking on the wrong thing, and again you'll get a little frustrated with it, but you'll get used to it. And I can even Command Shift click to select multiple layers right, visually, rather than having to go to my layers panel. Now when it comes to importing files or importing layers from other documents, usually I just hit File Open, and I'll just open that document, go into it, copy and paste the layer across. You do have a File Place command, and I'm sure there's people out there that use these. I just don't mostly because they're relatively new and I got used to just hitting file open, but you might really like using it. Quick word about file embedded versus file linked. You can see there the file embedded means it's going to bring all the data into your document and you don't have to have that original file. If I use the file or place linked, it's going to link to that file, and I always are going to have that external file so it shows up in Photoshop. What's cool about that is if I change that file, it'll change inside my Photoshop document. It's an advanced feature. Right now, you don't have to worry about it, but later on, that can be really handy if you're doing branding across 20, 30, 40 different Photoshop documents. Okay. Now, finally, before we dive into a little bit of a few other things, there is a shortcut to bring your layers panel up, and it's always been F7. Okay. However, on the Mac, and especially on your MacBook Pro, it's going to be Function F7 in order to bring up the function keys on your keypad. If you have an external keyboard like I have here, it's still going to be Function F7 unless I go to my System Preferences and go to my Keyboard Preferences, and there's a little button here called Use F1, F2, etc. keys as standard function keys on the external keyboard. Basically what this means is use the function keys as nature intended it. The function F7 just has never sat right for me, so I would much rather just be able to hit F7 and pull up my layers panel anytime I want. But that's personal preference. That's up to you. Okay, so just take a moment, go into that smart object there, smart object number 1, and just get used to renaming files or renaming layers, moving the layers around, copy and pasting, and then we'll do some more advanced stuff next.